Hi, and welcome to the Spooky Hours. My name's David Saunderson, and today we're talking to Portsmouth writer Matt Wingett. How are you, Matt?
Great, really good to see you, David. How are you?
Yeah, good, thank you. How are you doing with all this lock up, lock down, lock in
The
between?
lockup.
I don't know.
Yeah, it's all right. I'm a writer, aren't I? This is my life generally anyway. So
Stay indoors.
staying indoors, don't see the outside world. Scared of the daylight. Shrivel up when the sunlight hits me. So all in all, it's quite normal.
Well, that's why you're very welcome with Spooky Hours, because we only come out at night. Today we're talking about your new book, Mysteries of Portsmouth. Now,
Yes.
I've known you for a number of years, and you've tended to write some strange things about the people of Portsmouth, some of the histories, but you've never actually jumped all the way into some supernatural kind of strange settings. Can you tell us a bit about the book and how it came to be?
Sure. Yeah. So, as you say, I've published loads of other stuff to do with Portsmouth in the past. I'm a local historian, and what happened is that I also do fiction. And what happened was that there's one book that we used to have called Dark City: Portsmouth Tales of Haunting and Horror, and people would see that on the market stall and they pick it up and then they go, "Oh," and I go, "What?" And they say, "Haven't you got any real ghost stories? These are all short stories." And I'm like, "Real ghost stories? Where would I find them?" So I did a search through the British newspaper archive and I looked for anything supernatural, paranormal, unexplained going back over the last 200 years and found all sorts of crazy stuff. And that's what the book is based on, really.
Well, that's right. Well, you've got hauntings, you've got sea monsters, which I want you to tell us about that, because Portsmouth obviously is a maritime centre. It was the home of the Navy, I believe. So
Yeah.
you've got lots of that kind of stuff. You've also got connections to King Tut and UFOs and all sorts of things. So we'll start at the beginning. Tell us about the sea monsters.
The sea monsters. Yeah, sure. Okay. So, I mean, the story about the sea monsters is essentially that, of course, Portsmouth, as you say, Britain's premier naval base, has been for the last nearly 1,000 years. You get a lot of travellers coming in and sailing into port, having seen weird, strange, and unusual stuff all over the world. And some of those things include sea monsters. So, of course, travellers' tales are always interesting, but what I wanted was to be sure that the stories had some kind of documentary evidence to them. So in the newspapers, the ones that started coming up in the 1840s and thereafter, there was a sudden spurt of amazing sea monster stories. And I think the one that really sticks in my mind is the sighting of a sea monster off of St. Helena, I think it was, by the Commodore who was in charge of the Royal Yacht. And when he got back into base, he announced there was this huge thing traveling through the water, hundreds of meters long, with the initial report said that the jaws were so wide that a grown man of 7 foot could stand inside them. When the actual report was released from the Admiralty, that had been somewhat reduced to the neck size of about 30 inches. So not exactly wide enough, really, unless it's got incredibly long jaws for a man to stand inside it. But great stuff. I mean, really interesting to see these strange and unusual stories. I mean, mermaids as well. Lots of accounts like this. But those stories, I mean, you had the one from the Royal Yacht, but they continued coming through. And the most recent one that I've found was actually from a submarine, which apparently hit some large fishy object. And what's interesting is the newspaper reports, they always say it's a fishy object, as if to imply that there's something not quite right about this story. And and that one was during World War II, and it damaged the sub. So who knows? But I put it all in there. Great fun.
Okay, well, tell us about King Tut, because I don't understand how there's a connection with Portsmouth. Everything we ever ask you, when I'm talking to you, I say, Charles Dickens is born in Portsmouth. Sherlock Holmes is created in Portsmouth. All these things happen in Portsmouth. Now tell me, how can King Tutankhamun be connected to Portsmouth?
Interesting story. So the story is, in 1922, 1923, Howard Carter was in the Middle East about to do an archaeological dig when a young policeman called Richard Adamson saw a group of local Egyptians who were known for being looters and thieves uncovering something over in the Valley of the Kings. So he waited till they left and then investigated and found some steps going down. He notified Howard Carter, and these steps turned out to be the entrance to the tomb of King Tutankhamun. Absolutely amazing. So the guy who was part of the archaeological dig who found the tomb actually wasn't Howard Carter. It was Richard Adamson, who lived in Drayton, which is a suburb of Portsmouth. Of course, because Portsmouth is the centre of the universe.
It is. So what do you? It's Pompey. So what do you call someone from Pompey? In polite company, anyway.
Yeah, there's a question. Do you know? Sometimes Pomponian comes
Pomponian.
out.
Pompeyite. So it was a Pomponian that alerted Howard Carter then, and they obviously get around the world then.
Yeah, absolutely right. And of course, what happened afterwards, and I won't give all the details away, but the whole team, the whole dig team, except for 2 people over the next few years, died under mysterious circumstances. I mean, Lord Carnarvon died within a few hours of the discovery of the tomb. There's all sorts of strange and mysterious sort of circumstances around his death. There were other friends and parts of the dig team died until within about 10 years, there were only 2 people left alive who were part of the dig team, one of whom was Richard Adamson. And in 1970, so 50 years on, he was invited onto TV to talk about the curse. And he did indeed go on TV and say, "It's all rubbish. I'm here to explode the myth of the curse of King Tutankhamun." Bad move. Bad move. Terrible things happened to him thereafter.
Okay, we're gonna have to read the book to find out what that was. I've been in the tomb of King Tut as well, and I'm still here. So let's just hope that's the case after this conversation. Okay, there's also UFOs in this book.
Yeah.
So even not just the center, literally the center of the universe now. So tell us, UFOs. I believe the first UFO investigated by the Ministry of Defence has something to do with Portsmouth.
You are absolutely bang on the money. So what happens is June the 1st, 1950. So there'd been, sort of UFO sightings all over the place beforehand. There'd been, obviously in 1947, there was the first UFO sighting of the modern era. And there'd been some reports of sightings over the UK, but they'd all been ignored basically because they'd gone into the tabloid papers and it's like, yeah, that's interesting. And then what happens is that a Gloucester Meteor pilot who's flying out from RAF Tangmere, which is just along the coast from Portsmouth, is flying over Portsmouth when he reports seeing an incredibly bright light in the sky. And no, it's not the sun. I know the weather here is terrible, but he reported it back to RAF Tangmere, and then Tangmere called it into RAF Wartling, which was a big radar station. And Wartling then recorded independently from 4 different RAF radar operators that they were seeing an object traveling at 1,600 to 2,000 knots, traveling over Portsmouth, moving towards and away from the radar array. And it was completely unexplained what it was. So the RAF pilot, this was on June the 1st, 1950, the RAF pilot, landed, and this caused a real stir with the Ministry of Defence. And they then started a UFO investigation. And indeed, the group that they set up to start it had such a great name. It was called the FSWP, which is the Flying Saucer Working Party, which I just think is perfect. That's so 1950s Britain. flying saucer. I like that. So it gives you an idea of what it actually was looking like. So yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
So, yes.
Got that. There's so much in this book, but we can't let you go without telling us about Portsmouth's most haunted manor, Wimmering Manor. Tell us a little bit about that, because obviously there's a lot to tell.
Yeah.
Because we're obviously going to have to get you back. We're going to have to get you back on here because there's, I'd like to talk to you a little bit further about Arthur Conan Doyle. We did a video with you probably about 5 or 6 years ago where we tried to wander around Southsea, and you show us. We'll do a link in that. We'll connect that to here. Where me and you tried to walk around Southsea and have you stand and point at, where Arthur Conan Doyle, wrote Sherlock Holmes and stuff. But we had all sorts of trouble, and including a hydrofoil or something like that coming into shot. So it was not a
hovercraft. It was
hovercraft.
So
we'll get you back to do a proper Arthur Conan Doyle and how he became a spiritualist in in Portsmouth. But we'll leave it with Wimmering Manor. Tell us about that.
Wimmering Manor, it's an interesting one, really. Wimmering Manor is an old manor house which is on the outskirts of Portsmouth. Portsmouth, the main part of the city of Portsmouth, is on Portsea Island. It's Britain's only island city. Wimmering is just off the island, and the manor house has been there. It's reported as having been there since the days of the Domesday Book, and it's got this really ancient history. There are parts of it which go back even further. There are parts of it go back to like Anglo-Saxon period. There's even talk about some Roman stuff there. It's got a very, very long history, and it's not far from Porchester Castle, which is also this ancient, Roman castle that was there. So the story with Wimmering Manor is that over the years it's amassed loads and loads of ghosts, and it's supposed to be Hampshire's most haunted house. And it's got something like 26 different ghosts in it. Now, it's possible that you can go in there these days and actually do ghost hunting tours, and it's great fun. But the stories that are that abound about it include the story of Reckless Roddy, who in the Middle Ages was a guy who was a local knight. And he was a bit of a git, really. And what happened was the person who was at Wimmering Manor had just got married. He got called away on urgent business and left his new bride in the manor house alone. And Reckless Roddy arrived on horseback, jumped off, and decided that he would go in and rape the poor bride, newlywed. So he went in, but unfortunately for him, unfortunately for her, the husband arrived back in time, caught Reckless Roddy, and as he was running away, the husband drew his sword, and Roddy had just got his foot into the spurs, and he was struck down by the angry husband. The horse panicked and bolted and ran away with Reckless Roddy in tow. And the story is that every now and then down the alleyway, down the avenue that you hear that's outside the place, you will hear from time to time the beating of a horse's hooves, a ghostly horse's hooves. But that's not all of it, because also inside, if a newlywed or a bride goes into the house, supposedly strange things start moving around and terrible hauntings happen. And this is why, perhaps this is my joke now, what with the horse and the brides, I'm just setting this up. That's why there's no bridal suite. That's terrible, isn't it?
It is terrible.
So that's one. There's also the story of the red-handed nun who is seen at the top of the stairs at one place, and the story is that the sound of nuns chanting is heard, and this red-handed nun with blood dripping from her hands is seen at the top of the stairs in one place, because the room above, which is supposedly called Noah's Ark, is where pregnant nuns used to have abortions in the Middle Ages. So yes, no remains of children have been found in the gardens yet. But yeah, that's another one, and so it goes on. There are countless ones. There's a story of the Violet Lady who appeared to the owner of the house in the early 20th century, and his name was Thomas Knollys Parr, and he was a direct descendant of Catherine Parr, the wife of Henry VIII. And his story is that he woke up one day to see this woman in violet dress, in a blue dress, in his room, a ghost, who just sat and talked with him. It turned out that it was his cousin who died a few months before, sat there and said, how are things? And he had a good long chat with her. And then she said, well, we're just waiting for your Auntie M to come over. So she's with us now, so I'll be off. And she disappears off. And he then gets a telegram the next day telling him that his Auntie M has indeed just died. Great. There's weird stuff going on in that place, I tell you. I love it.
Well, there you go. There seems to be so much stuff that I'm sure, and I know you could talk for hours, but you certainly found out a lot of stuff here, and I think it's something that even if you've not familiar with Portsmouth, there's lots of fun tales in there to learn about. How do people get a copy of that?
Oh yes, let me show it. Here it is. Tum tum tum. Mysteries of Portsmouth. There it is. It's available from my website, lifeisamazing.co.uk. There's a shop on there. I post out for free in the UK. The book is £10. You can also get it from Amazon. You can get it from your local bookshop if you want to order it, though not probably at the moment.
No.
So yeah, I mean, it's available as a general book, but it'd be great if you came to me. Like I say, I post out in the UK for free, but you can get it anywhere in the world through Amazon as well.
And I'm sure you'll deface it for them with the
Yeah,
signature.
if you email me and say, will you sign it? I'll be happy to do that. Absolutely, yeah.
There you go. All right. Well, thanks very much for that, Matt. And I look forward to maybe talking to you in the future about Arthur Conan Doyle and the connection with Portsmouth, because again, I'm sure we could do a 3-hour episode on that one, but we won't.
Like that talk that I gave that went on for hours. Do you remember at that pub when you asked me to come up and talk? Oh my goodness.
Yes. Well, again, I know when I bring Matt Wingett onto anything that he's certainly not going to be lost for words anyway. All right. Thanks, Matt. You take care of yourself. We'll talk to you later.
Great to see you, and thanks for having me, mate.
See you. Bye-bye.